So what first inspired you to become a cinematographer?
Oh boy, it just seemed right. I think it just felt right. Like I was interested in science. I was interested in art. I started in the theater in high school. I was doing theater lighting and set building, and then I got uh, more familiar with sort of filmmaking. I started to I was curious about what it was, and cinematography just seemed right. It just felt like it checked all the boxes for me, and it was, it took a long time for me to kind of figure out in fact, I'm not even sure I know now, like sort of what cinematographers do. We're always kind of, every film is different, every working relationship is different. But when I was young and I was sort of trying to figure out what to do with my life, it just felt right.
That's good to hear. And so before working as a director of photography, like actually landing that position in many productions, you have worked as a gaffer, a camera operator, AC, and a lot more. So I'm curious to hear as well, what was your journey like from first wanting to pursue the career, as you mentioned, to finally landing your first jobs as an actual DP?
My journey was a long one. It was longer than most, probably. I spent a lot of time coming up through the ranks, and I learned from other cinematographers and I worked for them. I was a gaffer for a really long time, but I did work as an operator. I did work as a second unit DP. I worked as an assistant and a grip and a dolly grip. And, I spent a lot of my young life as a movie set grunt, and I'm really glad I did it that way, because it was a long period of discovery for me, but it gave me a really good foundation to learn from some of the greats, So it was I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
So with Raised by Wolves, I noticed also that you worked on some of the later episodes in the season. So what was it like, kind of like having to, instead of necessarily forming your own visual style from the start, having to kind of follow along and kind of make sure that you can put in your own voice while still kind of coloring inside the boxes, as I'd say?
Well, it's a great challenge. I mean, I was following, the work that Darius had done with Ridley, and Ross Emery had shot a couple episodes before I got there. So there was, the show was off and running before I arrived. But, every script offers its own set of challenges, and each director, brings something different to the table. So you're working within the boundary lines of what the show set out to be, and certainly I think what Ridley had wanted it to be. But there was a lot of encouragement from Ridley and everybody at Scott Free and everybody at HBO to explore and try things and push the envelope, as much as we could. So I think all of us felt like we had the opportunity to bring ideas to the table and expand on the world that Ridley and Darius had put together in the opening episodes.
You've also formed a strong collaborative bond with one of the most influential filmmakers of our time, David Fincher. So how has working with a strong creative voice like his over the years influenced the way in which you approach your craft overall?
Well, I think that when you have the privilege to work with directors like David or Ridley, that have a strong point of view, and they have a really good technical understanding of the mechanics of cinema, it's a privilege for a cinematographer, because you can really have detailed conversations with them about something you're trying to accomplish. Or, for me, my work with David, and certainly the work on Raised by Wolves, we could look at things in a very detailed fashion in terms of what we were trying to accomplish, because the people we were communicating with understood the process and understood what we were dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So, for me, it's an absolute joy, and certainly I've learned a tremendous amount from David, which I've been able to apply to other work. So, it's been fantastic for me. That relationship has been fantastic.
So you're also kind of a front runner in the 2021 awards race with Mank, and this is a film in which kind of the cinematography really influenced the overall atmosphere more than it does in like most other films that are coming out nowadays. And honestly, it was probably my favorite part of the entire film. Like, great film, but the cinematography was really top notch. So I'm also curious to hear, how was it that you approached kind of crafting the look and feel of that project? Because I know I've heard like that you kind of tried to shy away from film and go more for digital. And again, try to mimic that kind of like older era while keeping it modern as well. So that's what I'm curious to hear about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, we talked a lot about what the film could be and what we wanted it to be, and we pulled a lot of references. I sent David images after images of mostly film stills. Every project's different. Some of the, sometimes you look at painting, sometimes you look at fine art photography, sometimes you look at a combination of fine art photography and film. In the case of Mank, I think it was almost entirely film, and films of the period. But we were trying to transport the audience and bring them back to that time period, and certainly using some techniques of the period and some modern techniques to do that. But at the same time, there's elements of modernism in the storytelling that we debated, but we felt comfortable using. So it's a bit of a mix, I think, and a lot of that has to do with the way we were telling the story and some of the blocking choices we were making, some of the camera choices we were making. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's we worked hard on it.
Yeah, it's visually striking, and honestly, I hope you win, you sweep, because it was really great. So also in this day and age, we're kind of seeing that the line between the mediums of film and television has begun to kind of shrink more and more. So apart from the previously mentioned kind of epic scope of Raised by Wolves, your latest project, Mank, is also getting its biggest release on streaming on Netflix, as well as Mindhunter, which also kind of got that Netflix release, but very much had some things and aspects to it that were very much kind of on the film side of it. So I'm also curious to hear, what are your thoughts on the industry's recent like accelerated pivot to streaming and home releases over theatrical experiences?
Well, I'm certainly traditional in the fact that I adore the cinema and I love the cinema experience. And I love the collective experience of sitting in the cinema with an audience. Right now, with what's going on in the world, I think the opportunity to bring your work to the audience, period, is a blessing. And so any way that we can get our work seen and appreciated is fantastic. I think that there is a fair argument to support the idea that there is a blurring of the line, I guess. In the end, I think you want to reach people and you want your stories to reach people. So, and you want studios, who will support your storytelling. And, Netflix certainly been that. I think HBO Max certainly been that, in terms of giving filmmakers the opportunity to tell their stories. And that, I think, right there is really our priority, is having the opportunity, the platform to tell our stories. And, wherever they get shown, you hope they get shown on the biggest screen possible, but that's not always the most important thing.
And so, final question, what advice would you have for aspiring cinematographers, especially like trying to work during these times and trying to get ahead during this pandemic?
Become as cinema literate as you possibly can, and talk about movies with as many people as you possibly can, and look for filmmakers that you have shared sensibility with, and look for creative partners that where you can do good work together. And that's not always easy, but that's where I think most people find success, is when they find someone that they can connect with and work with. And that's really what it is in the end. Cinematography is there's plenty to be said for your individual skill, but it has everything to do with your relationship with the director and the producer, and how all of you come to the final product.
Thank you once again so much for coming on board here to talk with us. It was a pleasure to have you on board. And I can't wait to see how award season goes for you, because I'm sure, again, you're going to sweep all of them, because it was – and same with Raised by Wolves, great work on that too. So
Thank you. You're very kind. It's my pleasure.